Welcome back, everyone. I think gonna resume from our tiny break. But I think okay, let's just have a quick recap of what we discussed about during our previous section of this episode. Yeah. So I think we had Mom, myself, and Rooney, and we talked about our high school experience. During the first part, we talked about how me and Rooney were both in very competitive Chinese vernacular high schools, and how sometimes being in a big fish in a small pond versus a small fish in a big pond, or something like that. Yeah, and how that helped change how we learn and all that. So, and then we moved on to the second part where we talked about the matriculation, how we actually decided on going to matriculation and foregoing some of our chances to go overseas to study, A levels in UK sponsored and all that. So we went to university and talked about how four of us were all public university made in Malaysia. So let's continue on that, and we have to introduce a very special guest it's very hard to get because of the full schedule. It's our beloved dad, who was not with us because he was on Park Kwan Chai's spiritual journey, as always. Very holy guy. All respects to you, Dad.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. Glad to be here. Glad to join the podcast again. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Dad. Thanks for
Hi,
joining
Dad.
us. So, I think Rooney, talking about your experience in uni, and public uni, and with regards to your legal profession, all that, and this inferiority complex and all that. I also touched about it on my medical field, but I think I wanted to speak about it later on because in the UK, especially once I get more experience here. So I think let's just continue on where you left off.
I think what I was trying to say that just now, yeah, so from where we left off, I think I was in the midst of saying how I think admittedly there are times that as in my industry, I do suffer from inferiority complex sometimes, especially when a lot of the law graduates of my seniority and even with a lot of people that I work with, they are all mostly graduates from the UK. So there are times that you feel like, oh, you sometimes feel like, okay, I don't know how competitive I am in that market, or how would you fare well working with them and socializing as well. And there are times that they always reminisce about their days in the UK, and then you sort of find yourself a bit out of place in conversations. That's I think that's normal, but I don't think that's something that did or should prevent me from, I don't know, opportunities at work and all that, because I always feel like, and I say this to my mentee as well, it's always really how we make or what we make out of the experience that I have. I think I have a really good experience when I was in UM. I think because we're in UM and sometimes we feel like, okay, we know the job market is very competitive, so we're always very, very hungry. We'll go out, we'll find the experiences, know that you need to work harder, you need to have more exposure. So like in UM, students like they'll go out, they'll go out and do mooting and all that. And then usually they put in really a lot of extra effort because you feel like, okay, I'm going against the NUS and the Oxford. So when you feel like, okay, when you feel intimidated, sometimes that drives you even further to work harder and make sure that even if you lack on paper what other people might deem to have more sort of glorified CV in terms of education background, it would often drive you to do more to supplement for it. So I really do feel like it's when it comes down to it, is individuals' attitude and how hungry you are and how determined you are to like go out and put yourself out there and get all the exposures that you think you want to have. And you can always bring different things to the table. It doesn't mean that just because everyone else has more fancier degree, so to speak, or everyone's graduated from UK, you bring different perspective to the table.
Not to put down UM, because I think we are both very lucky to get into UM for medicine and law. Sure, because I am in public healthcare sector. So like I was mentioning in the previous sections, that I don't feel it as much. I don't feel the need to be as competing for a job, because the job is there for you, sort of, right? So for me, but for you, it's a corporate world, yeah, unless you go into civil service in DPP work and all that. Yeah, you're gonna have to compete against people from Oxford, Cambridge, this Ivy Leagues and all that. Like you said, other than social functions and all, do you feel sometimes like, you know what? Okay, I am not as good as they are, and like they are really miles beyond us, in terms of their education and their overview of things and their horizons and how they see things is really that different than how we were taught.
Okay, I think the way I put it, I still really do think it boils down to the individual. I think when I did my exchange when I was in US, even though I was not in a huge fancy university, I was in University of Wyoming, I could see when I studied there, I was so appreciative of the education system, and I see how that the quality of education differs. UM is I'm not saying that UM is not great, but it's just a different culture, and then that culture encourages you to do so much more critical thinking and be a lot more opinionated, which a lot of very good lecturers in UM try to sort of instill that as well. But I do see a bit of certain parts disparity in sort of classroom culture in US and then when I was in UM. So I think the process, I recognize that my experience in UM and those of my colleagues, my peers, when I'm working, they would have gone through a different education system. I acknowledge the process is different, but I don't necessarily think that the end product will necessarily be that different. So I think that a UM graduate could easily, depending on how they utilize their time while they are in UM, could be easily as competitive. You can compete in terms of quality of work. You can produce equally, if not better quality of work if you're a person who really strives to always do better. And I think that inferiority complex came to me even more sort of obviously when I was doing mooting, because we were competing against Oxford, you're competing against NUS and the best universities in Sydney, in Australia, the best universities in UK. That's when I was like, oh my God, I'm constantly so intimidated, and I know that I'm intimidated purely by the name. I don't know who the actual mooters are. I've not met them, but just by the name, I get intimidated. And that's when I realized that we are now competing on a same sets of case. It's the same case, same facts, and you're competing purely on merits. I think UM students can fare very, very well. Even if you're going against the big names, you just need to get over that mentality that, oh, because they're from better universities, surely they'll do better than us. I think once you get over that and you realize that we've tried our best, we put in so much effort to fight on the same merits, the same case, we can actually do quite well.
So, but surely there must be a reason why those universities are top. Maybe it's the way they are assessed, they are ranked. Maybe it's more Western based. The system is developed based on the West and how they evaluate things. So maybe some universities in Asia lose out in that sense. But that being said, they still rank places like Hong Kong, Singapore way above us. So the fact that happens shows that maybe it's not that so much bias towards the West, or maybe sort of a more Western education system that Hong Kong and Singapore share in common, maybe. Maybe that's the case. Because I'm sure they have their merits, right? Why Oxford is top.
Yeah, for sure.
I think, like you mentioned, I think some of your lecturers, I noticed some of your lecturers in uni and metrics, some of them were a bit different. Maybe they were educated overseas, they want to bring or instill that new liberal, more critical thinking that they learned from maybe overseas, and they wanted to instill it in our classrooms. But sometimes I feel like it just doesn't work sometimes. Like, because they'll be all excited, passionate, they'll try to ask a lot of questions, but everyone, including myself sometimes, we are just so shy. Right? And so everyone just keeps quiet. The whole lecture hall is silent. No one gives a response. So the lecturer tries a few times, and eventually sometimes they also get a bit disheartened, like, no response, how can I? But you can't really, not to say blame game or what, because all this generation of students have been educated throughout Malaysian system since primary, secondary school, matrix, and it is that system. So when you reach university, it's a bit hard. So but if you are given the opportunity, you go to Ivy League maybe. Then you certainly have a steep learning curve where you have to adapt their system, and then you might turn out differently as an adult as well. Maybe that's the case. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you, because a lot of it, and then we spoke about our experience in the public primary school and secondary school. The thing about the public school system is they reward people who excels in exams, and your critical thinking skills, although it counts for some, but it's not a lot. So people go ahead when it comes to SPM, especially people who don't, if we don't have enough resources to go and apply and go into good universities on our own account and on our own expenses, scholarships and all that, it's based on your SPM results ultimately. And SPM is a system. I think you share the similar experience. SPM is a system, it's an evaluation system that evaluates your exam writing skills. And unfortunately, a lot of it is also not so much critical. There are some, again, there are some critical thinking skills, but it's a lot of regurgitating what you've memorized.
So many of us, right, who are not so financially well off that can fully sponsor a complete overseas education. Of course, overseas education is at different tiers, right? So anyhow, so those of us cannot. So the only way to actually go for a good overseas uni and all that is probably through, like you said, SPM, good SPM results. Then you get JPA scholarships. Then you go to all these universities. So if you are not financially capable, you just have to go through a local system, and you have to fight your way into a public university, like most of us did, and all of us in our family did. So do you think it's a right?
No, I just want to add that realistically, I'm also quite realistic in the sense that I know that, of course, there are some, it could very well be that even if I had that resources, I may not get into the Harvards and the Cambridge and the Oxford, and I wouldn't have been able to compete with those people who can get in with or without financial assistance.
true.
So I accept that there is
a very strict criteria that I don't think I can get in as well. I guess you really have to be quite excellent on that. And some people, and some of my friends, I think they prepared it for all their life. They don't only do the SPM, but they also know that what Harvard, Yale, whatever requires. So they do whatever is needed for that. They prepare the essays. They do extra work to get into those kind of universities. So I think it would be, I think it would be nice if we can get mom and dad more into this conversation at this point, seeing that they are also products of both the same uni. Let's just get dad or mom in on their experience as a public university product.
Well, being a product of a public university, I don't feel in any way inferior. I do acknowledge the fact that public universities, or rather the education system in Malaysia, does stress a lot on formal education and also very exam oriented, and a lot of memory work and a lot of regurgitation or production of what we memorize, etc., and less emphasis on critical thinking, right? But however, I don't feel that we should feel inferior because we came from public universities. However, it's more towards the individual. I think being a person fortunate to have a tertiary education, one should look at the bigger perspective of things. It's all based on individuals. You got to look at things more critically. You got to look at things at different perspective. You got to be open-minded. You got to not to be under a coconut shell and then just follow. You should be encouraged to question. And we do have lecturers. Many of the lecturers, some of them are coming from, or rather, most of my lecturers are the local universities, but they go for their masters and PhDs and overseas. So they have a good mix of that. As a result, you're fortunate you meet a more or rather advanced lecturer, then they'll encourage more articulation, etc. So I think bottom line, it goes back to individuals. We need to look at things at a bigger, wider perspective, and then encourage undergrads to start critical thinking, to start debating, etc. And of course, the other thing is also the abolishment of the Universities and Universities Colleges Act does open a door for university students to be more vocal, so that in the past, under the authoritarian regime past, where everything is silence, not only the press but university students, but now with the opening up and the realization that we need to have more inputs, good that we encourage the academicians to really speak out and then have more critical thinking and more articulation. That's my input.
I wanted to bring it a bit back. I think for your time, right, because there's a two generation of university students here, right? Me and Rooney, our generation, and you and Mom. If I understand it correctly, you and Mom, your generation, a lot of people didn't get to go to university in the first place. So getting into public or private or any tertiary education is already a very a precious opportunity that, not many people say, oh, I wish I could go overseas and have the luxury of thinking about that. I think that is something that maybe our generation is more prone, right? What do you think, Renee? Is more prone to sort of aspire to, that I want to go to US, I want to go to UK, blah, 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 overseas is better. Is it really? Some universities probably are. So I think that's a big generation.
There's a lot of people of our generation. Of course, again, not everybody still have the privilege to go to university, but for a majority, a lot of people think going university is a given. It's just a matter of where.
Correct.
Do you do it here?
Correct.
Do you do it overseas? Do you do it in private, or you do it in public
Yeah.
universities?
Last time it was either you get to go university, wow, great job. So and nowadays also there's a lot of private colleges to come out, right? Pre-U programs. So it's just such a different environment. I think you have to, put this in context as well. For mom and dad, what do you think when you all got to go?
Yeah, during our time in the early and mid 80s, there were very, very limited private universities available in Malaysia. Currently, we have a lot of private universities, and also there are twinning programs that you can actually go to an overseas university but then studying locally over here. In the past, there were only about 5, 6, 7 public universities in Malaysia. That's really a privilege to be able to enter a public university at the time. Imagine it's only 5 or 6. Now we have at least 10 or 20 public universities. And private universities are unheard of.
One thing I want to say is, I did like to compare the university representative to, I remember Coco Wen represented UM for a swimming competition in NUS. So you see the medical students from NUS, academically, I don't know, but physically, they are more
more handsome, more tan, more muscular.
I think they're more rounded lah. They are, instead of only be a study nerd, they are all more rounded. They are sportsmen, and same time they are good at their studies. Same thing when I do my guiding. Last time I did one time I do freelance guiding, and then I was guiding this Singapore primary school students brought by their teachers. Their teachers especially the male, are very handsome, and then very nicely built. I think because they went for NS. So that's the difference.
National service.
So you compare our teachers here, San QQ, especially the male teachers.
I think this is a bit of a physical appearance.
I'm saying that they are more rounded.
Yeah.
Then for my time, I know that, like what you say, our time, you don't hear many people go overseas. And then, but because we are not from professional courses, we are for the not so good courses. For my science, I'm doing pure science, is the lowest mark for you to enter. So, but I see the applied science. Last time USN don't have engineering courses. All the applied science students are the brilliant students, and they are doing very well. Outside, they are the VP of international, like there is exports VP of international company. I got my friends pure science also, but they can be VP of PAMCO and all that. So I think not me lah. They are all very brilliant. I think from my time can enter university, public university. That time also don't have this. Each state have one university. That time only less than 10 public university. You don't have university police, university Pahang, not like that. Not so many universities. So if you can get into one of the public university, I think I can count as UM, USM, UPM, UKM, and maybe UPM only. There's all 5 or 6 public universities only. At that time also not so many people so rich, especially Chinese people. Everybody send you overseas. Where got so many people so rich? I don't know why people not so rich.
You need to give yourself some credit. I think if you were to continue in corporate sector, I'm sure you'll rise up the ranks also, but you stop your work for family, for other reasons and all that. So yeah, you can't say that. So give yourself some credit.
No, I don't like the corporate life, so I don't think I can rise.
My take is that definitely local public university graduates are not inferior. They shouldn't feel inferior versus the overseas grads. But it has got to do with more towards individual. Then of course, we do have in the past nerdy students, people just want to study, they don't go for all-rounder. When you have 4 years of privileged tertiary education, then you enjoy. You go, you study, you do the best, you excel in sports and extracurricular, you enjoy your freedom. So that's why at the time, the 4 years, they call it FAMA, father and mother scholarship. Don't worry about job opportunities, don't worry, just study as much and pass all the exams, and then after that, take all the courses you want to take, do all the extracurricular activities, build up your leadership, join organizations that can build up leadership, teamwork, etc. that will kind of build you up to be a better leader. Now, I'm saying this because it so happens that me and Mom came from USM, and USM at that time was known for being more all-rounded, even though UM has been the very premier and very called established and oldest university. Until today it is, and USM has been the second oldest university at SI, and then they emphasize more on extracurricular activities. So it's up to individuals to maximize the utilization of all the things available to make you more all-rounder. Yes, I agree with Mom that there are many of our classmates, etc., turn up to be very well, leading corporate companies in very high positions. Well, it's a byproduct of that.
And then our time, the only pathway to public university is only STPM. That time, no matriculation. And then one thing
sorry, correction.
From 6.
Correction. There is matriculation, but because of the government policies at that time, the matriculation was not opened to other races. And later on, only they opened matriculation 10%. They opened to other races. So because of that, at that time, all the while matriculation has been in place, but unfortunately, because of the bias system and the education system that's rotten, it was very, very racial. As a result, matriculation is not open. But now, matriculation is open to at least 10% is open to other races. You can see a better improvement in terms of academics, in terms of competition.
So the filter system already filtered the good SPM students from 6, then filtered again. Now it's like everybody after SPM can go so many places. They can go so many paths. They can enter university. Private university, so they're still and then there's one thing I know is our system, education system definitely cannot compare to not university, but compare country to country lah. So when I was working in a Japanese company, the maths we learn in secondary we cannot use, but when I have a problem, I ask my boss how to solve. Then she asked me back, why you never study algebra? This is how you use algebra in this solution. So you straight away, we don't learn application, Then they learn a lot of application. I don't know that the Japanese system. So another thing is, and the company where we work in Sony is the biggest employer in Malaysia, 8,000 employees. All the engineers mostly from, what I know is mostly from local U, and there are a few from overseas U. The overseas students not no better than local youth. I think the local university engineering students are much better than overseas students. Engineering wise.
So I guess it just comes to the point, actually the scarcity of the position. So it's about filtering the best of the best minds into that field or whatever degree it is. And of course, if the university simply teach, then of course the person will either have to take their own initiative to learn from other resources or be better themselves. So whenever they are work and learn from other people from other modes, right? So when I guess nowadays it's like everyone has access to a degree, whatever the degree is. So many different degrees nowadays, right? You can't even keep track. So when everyone has a degree, it makes the degree a bit less valuable. Then people are looking for masters and PhD and whatnot. And some people even say that masters PhD doesn't mean a thing. It's academic. It's not applicable in work in certain masters and PhD as well.
Somewhere you can buy degree, buy PhDs everywhere.
And some people can also be very prominent leaders, buying degrees and PhD.
I'd like to make a comment over here that the education system locally here sucks. Number one. Number two, it has been politicized.
I beg to differ. Okay.
Yeah, so we can have a separate topic on this because it has been politicized to the extent that we are still fooling around with the education system, which is the future of the country. We do have now, some universities are so proud to announce that they have got one batch of convocation, 300 PhDs. How can you produce so many PhDs over there? And then you have so many degrees. You close an eye, you throw a stone, somebody's a degree holder, somebody's a PhD. That's ridiculous. So it has been politicized and it has been run by politicians, which is wrong. We should go back to whereby let the academics people run the whole thing.
I fully agree.
So I think we can have a different topic altogether because really, if you want to move the country forward, we got to have the political will and the guts to do what is right. So I feel very passionate, very emotional, and very sensitive on this topic because we actually lost a generation or two of good people because of bad policies. We are fooling around with politics and education and politics. Until
Yeah.
today, we are still fooling around with it about teaching of English and science, teaching
Yeah.
of science and mathematics in English. We have been flip-flop until today also, going round in circles
Yeah.
and then be in a state of denial.
Exactly. Totally agree with you. That every 5 years change one minister, then one minister follows whatever the population want to change this, play with little things like language, and then they're not seeing the big picture.
But I can't blame the minister because the problem is that every few years you change the minister, but the government has not changed until finally the PH or unity government came into power. The government has not changed, but then it's been flipping, flopping, playing the politics around. So we lost one or two generations of good people. Yeah. And until today, we still haven't figured out again. And we are trying to show good numbers, want to be popular, and want to kid ourselves and lowering the passing mark. Can you imagine lowering the passing mark to show that we are doing very well, which we are not, and we are compromising on the standard? At the end of the day, a few generations of the populace will suffer for that. Until today, we still are in a state of denial, unfortunately, because we don't have the political will to do what is right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we discussed about this in our previous podcast as well. But well, that is the problem, unfortunately. So, like Rooney, so I think you were disagreeing just now that when Dad said that our education system sucks. So what do you mean you disagree?
No, I know is the education system flawed? Yes. Is the involvement in politics affecting the quality of the education system? Yes. There's a lot of flaws in the system, but I think if we want to go into the actual topic of what are the flaws, what we could do better, what needs to be fixed, where do we start, I think that we should get like people who are experienced in education and policy to come in and then more better perspective. I think it's very easy to say, oh, they should have done this part. I think when it comes to actual policy, that there's so much more intricate, and then we really do need to bring in people with the expertise to speak more about it. But of course, there are general things.
Yeah, and even even like that say, if you get academicians in, we change this policy, we have this huge revamp, we remove all this system, preferential system, whatever, if everyone wants to suggest that, right? I think it will not sit well with some of the population. It might cause unrest. It might cause basically unrest, and when you have that happening, the reality of it is that it's just hard to change mindsets, which has been there, and certain things that's actually in the constitution and all that. It's a very nuanced thing, like we discussed previously. So
yeah, it's very nuanced.
It's hard.
It's easier to say, on this aspect you should do this, on this aspect you should do that. I met a lot of very passionate people who works in NGO education, and they really want to try and help and change, if not from within, then from NGOs and all that. But it's just, I've heard them talk about how frustrating it is, the pushbacks that they have. Even within the ministry itself, there are good people doing good work, but there will be challenges and hurdles that you go through. But of course, I accept, I think Daddy of late is having this policy that don't tell me what cannot be done, tell me what we can do, tell me what we can do better. Sure, I accept that. But that, I think, to be fair and to have a more informed and fruitful discussion, we need to bring in the people who has the experience inside.
I think we have the people. It's just that there's no political capital or will to do that, and that is the biggest thing. Same goes with health system. It's a lot of systems.
And the thing about education, of all the other sort of sectors and policies, education is something that you need people who are in there, who are not looking for short-term goals, who accept that whatever they do, it may not come out in fruition, and my goal may not fully realize even in my lifetime. You need people who are not selfish, who just wants to get re-elected and doesn't really care if things move along. And so you really need, like you said, that political will. It needs to be a very, very deep-seated, very sincere one, where you're not looking for political
down 20, 30 years and see, I don't care whether I win the next election, I'm going to make sure this happens. But no, the next election you will probably lose, and then someone will reverse that policy, and then there it goes. So how can we separate politics from education? Unfortunately, the reality is hard. So that you wanted to say something?
I'm just looking at low-lying fruits. whereby there are many certain things that cannot are entrenched. I'm not looking at constitutional changes. I respect BM as the national language and all these things, etc. But things like but teaching of science and mathematics and English are basically not racial, nothing to do with being nationalistic, etc. Can't be done. And then we are talking about changing color of shoes from white to black, and doing all those nonsensical things, etc. These which are very superficial and very ridiculous. And you also have politicians that emphasize on certain vernacular and all the other schools and all things. But then they are sending their children overseas. But then in education, they are forced the populace here who can't afford to go through the education system. But they themselves, the children, all is a hypocrisy. They send somewhere else. So what is good for the goose may not be good for the gender. Do what follow what I say, but don't do as I do. Unfortunately, this is the political situation or the vicious cycle that we're in.
Unfortunately, this discussion will lead to nowhere. I think that's the reality of it is. And the fact that we know what needs to be done, but we can't do, it's sort of difficult to change it. I understand frustration because it's also frustrating to me. It's like, can't you see that's not the picture? The language doesn't matter, right? Japan can teach English and science in Japanese for all who cares, they can teach it in Hindi in Japan. Nobody cares because they're not teaching, the language is merely a medium, right? But it's the thinking skills, it's the how you process knowledge, how you interpret it that is, I think, lost in our education system. Is not great compared to other countries. I think that's the problem. The language is just a superficial nonsense that people make a hoo-ha from, and everyone just gets all riled up and all. But I think I'm just tired of talking about that. But I think I just want to bring the focus of our discussion back our personal experience. Like, for example, you and mom, what do you think that you actually learned from your days in high school or in fact in university that you think that it was beneficial? Or do you think that maybe university was a nice paper, but it didn't really teach me things that I can apply in my life anyway? What do you think about that?
I was in the social sciences at that time, and what university gave me was a realization of looking at history at a different perspective. It was an eye-opener to me because our system of education was really going through the national syllabus and everything. So when I went into university and I took some papers in social sciences, it gave a different perspective, a Malaysian perspective on colonialism and how the Western powers, because earlier the education was just study, right, and just move on. But then it gave a perspective of how colonization come about, looking at things from a third world perspective. It was an eye-opener for me, as far as the social sciences are concerned.
Okay, for me, the only thing that I can remember, what I wish I learned is that's practical, because I'm a chemistry major. So there's one interesting lecturer that first thing he come into class, he asks us, "Oh, you all use soap powder at home. You all think your clothes wash cleaner with the soap powder that creates a lot of bubble, or the soap powder that doesn't create a lot of bubbles?" That is the first thing he asked us when he came into the class. And that was interesting to me. That is the only lecturer that I remember that taught us about chemistry. The rest is telling us chemistry, formulas, CH2O, all this, what add to add becomes what add to add. That's all. And then the other one is the maths lecturer. First year only. The first thing, because all the while we know, this what formula, all this formula, but we don't know how this mathematician came up with this formula. He was the one who taught us, step by step, how this formula came about. So that was interesting to me. These are the two things I found interesting in that. Actually, people actually studied how to develop a formula, a mathematics formula. It's not like out in the air or I say out in the air, create this formula. And it can be used to measure things and to calculate things. That is the only thing I learned. So, because mine is just pure science, so those are the two interesting things that, really we need in our life. So I don't find my university life, like, maybe I was a lazy student. I don't like studying in uni. I don't like the study part. The swimming pool part. Okay.
Dad also, I knew Dad and Mom, you all also were lifeguards, huh? Dad was the captain, wasn't it? In swimming pool, all muscular, Baywatch, you know?
Yeah, those were the days because we really enjoy our extracurricular activities. And that's where I met your mom in the swimming pool. And I was the lifeguard captain, she was the lifeguard. And then we also teach swimming to supplement our income and to pay the petrol for our transport. So it was university days was day well spent. It was years well spent if you fully utilize all the facilities, not only going to the library to study, but also participate in extracurricular activities, in sports, in games, representing universities, travel all over Malaysia, attend competitions, seminars. So that
And,
in a way helped to build up your leadership, how to build up that will be helpful later on in your career, in your working life, how to deal with people, all sorts of people, and how to arouse enthusiasm, and then at the same time then build teamwork and your leadership skills. All these comes into play later on in
and,
your working life.
and
So those
also,
were years well spent.
and also remember that you told me that you also, during lunchtime, you went to work at the economy rice stall and help be the cashier, and then you get a free meal out of it.
Oh yes, yes. At that time, we need to. Grandma only gave me a motorbike, but then I need to. Then later on, I moved to a small car. I need to pay my petrol. I need to earn some income. So
Mm,
with connections over there, how to earn income. So the opportunity arises where I got to help to sell economy rice lah at the food stall,
mm,
which is opposite USM Sungai Dua at the time. Then
mm.
they don't pay you money. They say, okay, I give you a free meal. You eat whatever you want. But at the same time, you spend about 1 to 2 hours during the busy lunchtime to help me collect money, to help me sell economic rice, food, etc. So then people
Mm.
were thinking, hey, how come I got to doing a business now? Now I'm not doing a business there. I'm earning part-time income. That's one. Number two, another way also will be teaching or swimming. At the time there are very few people know how to swim, so we do teach students swimming with the consent of sports office to earn some income, and we also do lifeguarding duties and other things to supplement our income, which is interesting. Money don't grow on trees. That's what we try to supplement our income that way.
So I think it sounds like, right, from what mom and dad saying, I think university for me, okay, of course, Rooney and I, we are in like medicine and law, so we learn a lot of substance things that has to be learned only through, university times that we can apply in our work and all that. So that is for us. But I think for all of us, I think in what is in common is that university was a place where we bridge sort of like student life to adult life. It's more of a social
That's true.
arena to meet your life partner, and also lifelong friends, right? A lot of our good friends now are our universities friends, and high school friends also, of course, and university friends. And sometimes it's also a good place to develop values and political awareness. Should be at least, right? And also pick up skills that you want to learn. For example, I play a lot of tennis in university with my friends for fun, and we went swimming sometimes, and a lot of fun things. I think university was in a local public university was still a lot of fun times for me, despite some dress regulations. You can't wear short pants sometimes, all this kind of things here and there. But it wasn't such a traumatic experience that it was a bad experience. It was still a nice experience, I think.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, university is the first time they're actually moving out of their house or their state to somewhere else. So yeah, the part about adulthood, although you might still get help from family, whether it's financial or otherwise or emotionally, but still you are probably for a lot of people, it's the first time leaving the nest as such, and then you are really a lot of your daily interaction relies on you coordinating with other people, liaising with other people on your own, or learning how to be with yourself, all those little things, a lot of soft skills that you wouldn't otherwise experience in high school. I think one thing, and as we were talking about those generational difference at the time, I think we were quite fortunate, Coco, that not that we spoke about Daddy's experience at the academy rice shop. I think when I was in university, I had a lot of friends who applied as well and did part-time job. I don't know whether you did it when you were in university. I remember,
No.
so I could see mom mouthing something or saying that we are pampered or
Spoiled brats.
spoiled brats. I think university is also a time you sort of discover from 1 to form 5, everything is sort of on track. Your goal is set for you. You just need to study and do well. You may have extracurricular activities that's where it differs from different individual. But university really is the start of more and more room and freedom for you to sort of paint your canvas. Whether you wanna, I'm just happy doing this, or you want to do a bit more, or you want to venture into that. There's so much freedom and room to build your character and gather, sort of collect experience and exposure and all that. It's a place where you start to realize that, okay, I need to learn to take ownership of the choices that I make.
I think university is also a good, as you said, a transition. You know, when you're in school, it's basically going to school half a day, then come back. But universities open a brand new area whereby you have so much freedom, how you manage your time. In terms of academics, you can take courses that you want, or extra. We have got elective and I can't remember, optional courses, etc. Like for example, I'm interested in international politics. Then I take papers in political science. Understand more about Israeli-Palestinian conflict and all this stuff. So you can study, take papers on that. That will what they call expand the horizon on areas of interest from the academic point of view. On the extracurricular point of view, you can join societies. Like for example, we went for around Malaysia, participating in competitions, attending competition seminars, representing universities. That gives you a big eye opener, and a lot of joy and a lot of keep you occupied, and expand things that you do not enjoy, or you do not have the opportunity to do in school. And then the best part about it is that you don't have to worry about getting a job for 4 years. You don't have to really talk much about the economic situation. You know that you are secured for 4 years, and you just continue making sure you pass the papers, you take exams, you get the credit points, etc. And the next 4 years, you don't have to worry. But then after the final year, then you start to think about reality of life. Are you ready to face life and then start to earn a living, etc.? So those the 4 years of university, 3 or 4 years of university life were the best years. And I think I hope that most graduates or undergraduates enjoy the time you have over there. It's a privilege to have a tertiary education in a public university. That's how I feel. No regrets. It's a privilege. But it was also a very arduous, very tough to get into that, because competitions were very, very great at the time. Opportunities were very limited and places were very limited.
I think that you made a good point as well. I think the flip side of, when it comes to public universities, we talk about inferiority complex. There's a flip side of it, the perks that we get to enjoy, which other perhaps private universities, or when you're studying overseas on your family's expense. I think what they don't get to enjoy is safety net is not the right word, but I like when I want to apply to go to the US for my exchange and all that, I know that the consequences is I might stay a year longer than my peers in university, and I wasn't stressed about that, because if I'm studying in UK and I take this time off, then I realized, okay, this means that my parents gonna have to pay this amount, and then I am a person who will get stressed about that, because I feel very guilty and all that. So I think that was the freedom that I got to enjoy as a public university student. I was not that concerned, although it still comes at an expense, because I'm coming out and working and having gainful employment a year later than my peers. But I don't have to have this very heavy sort of financial load weighing on me. I know, Coco, if that was a big thing for you.
Well, I think you fully maximized what you could do out of university more than me. I think you went to exchange in the US, you went to a lot of mooting overseas and all that. And I think you really utilized it. But for my medical faculty, it's very hard. I can't take additional subjects. There's simply no time. I can't be going on, sort of a semester exchange. Not that I know of anyone who does that. Even they
When
might
you
go for
went
1-2 weeks
overseas
to
for like
Nepal.
as a MedSoc president and all that.
Oh no, I didn't do anything as
US,
MedSoc.
you went to Isaac, China, darling.
Isaac is different.
Dali,
Isaac,
Dali.
true. That's true. I went to die. That's true. I forgot. Yeah, I did go through University Isaac society, right? And I went to Dalian for 6 weeks and I went to teach English. I don't know. Yeah. So
I
that
went to Dalian
that's
because
true.
the ratio of ladies to men was 6-1 or something like that.
Was
And
it?
there was
Was it?
there was a I remember, and there was the year before that was a Miss Universe being hosted over there.
Oh,
And we had a
no.
jolly
And
good
you
time
went,
over there.
and we went to Nepal for an internship.
I did 3 weeks. That's true. I think for the Dalian, is apparently in China is the top beauty producing province apparently. I had a nice time there, but I didn't have any illicit activities. I was a nerdy guy, still going through puberty that time, first year,
Oh, was it your first year?
End of first year uni. I went there.
Oh,
Very
okay.
nice. I stayed
Yeah,
with
but
some
your
few.
students loved you. When you
Yeah,
came
they
back,
did. They
you
did.
showed, yeah.
They gave me a huge knife, bayonet. In fact, I don't know whether they love me or is there something that tells me that they want to stab me or what. But they gave me a stay at home it fitted an AK-47 bayonet. So that was a nice experience. Yeah, that's true. University did provide us a lot of opportunities to do that actually if you search for it. Yeah,
Mm.
sure. I can't be on the US campus and everything, but it's fine. There are opportunities to do things here and there if you catch it and all that. Also got to date people there. Not learn to interact with girls and all. That lah. Quite nice lah. But learning to. So I was not the it popular handsome guy, like those US football player or swimmer, like lifeguard captain, like my dad lah, uni guy. But I met a lot of my good uni friends there. We started to go to gym, usually after breakups, friends who break up with their girlfriend, then they start going to gym. So I also follow lah. Nice experience. And I think we were lucky, Rooney, because we were in UM. It was near to KL. It's just in the KL city center.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can go like a lot of
That's right.
activities to do, have fun with friends and all that, and it was nice. But I took public transport. Yeah, I didn't have a car. Throughout I only last 2 years or so. Yeah, I have a car.
And then I
So
got to inherit your car.
yeah. I cycled mostly to faculty, to class actually. So that was a nice experience. Yeah. But overall, I think it was a good experience for university. That's true. That point brings up a very good point. Especially for his generation, it was really seen as a privilege for everyone. But our generation, we really we definitely remember it as definitely a privilege because to get into those fields in UM was very, very hard, and we're very happy that we managed to get in. And like you said, Rooney, the cost of it is just too big a difference, right? Like for example, my course for medicine for 5 years, and my lecturers and all, don't get me wrong, they were really good. They were inspiring lecturers. I think UM medicine I really appreciate it actually. Despite of what we're talking about in education as a whole in Malaysia, but I think medicine was really established course, and it was quite a long history of tradition as well. So there are really good lecturers in. The hostel life was also a fun part. Yeah, you learn to live with roommates of different kind. You could be an annoying roommate yourself. You learn to be more civic conscious. You learn all these things also from home, and you just bring it to living with other people in the community. So that was fun.
No, I agree. I think similarly for law as well. Which is why I think I felt a certain, I was very reactionary when that said education system sucks. So I think it's because I really had appreciation for especially my time in UM, because I think I've had some really good lecturers, and what I really was grateful for was how much they were willing to spend on our extracurricular exposure. And I don't think it was something that even private universities did as much. So it boils down to the faculty and how they budget it. I think law faculty of all other faculties in what's it called in UM, they have their own independent income because they're running these other courses, jurisprudence as well. So they were managing the finances even within the faculty quite well. And the dean was willing to spend on us and our exposure. So for that I'm very, very grateful.
And our dean was also very supportive as well. Our dean and deputy dean.
Oh,
Really,
yeah.
Yeah, I need to make a point of clarification. When I make a statement that the education system sucks, I'm referring to the system. I'm not referring to the quality of the academicians. I have the highest of respect until today of my lecturers in the university, etc. If only the universities could be run free from politicians, let the academicians run the universities, then it will be superb. But of course, there will be some sort of political control, nevertheless, right? But if there's less politics in education, then it will be better. But in no way am I reflecting on any standard or my lecturers, etc. Under today, I have the highest of respect. The academicians are good because they come. Most of them, of course, then after they come with dedication, etc. It's only the politicians that make things worse for them.
I think being in UM also, there was a privilege for us because a lot of the times, right, all those foreign dignitaries and leaders, they come to UM, because they come to KL for conference, then they'll come. Like there was Wen Jiabao, the premier that time of China, and then Barack Obama, right? Obama
Obama
also came
came,
to you.
yeah.
So that was quite nice, quite lucky of us to, run into those two figures during our university time. And I remember Anwar also came that time, and there was some big hoo-ha. He came on the truck and all that, and he was speaking. Then everyone went to listen. I went there as
At the
well,
gate,
and all.
yeah.
But he went to DTC eventually, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
Yeah, but
eventually.
outside, yeah. So I think I forgot, I lost
Mm.
my train of thought just now. I wanted to say was that the cost of the medicine degree. You know how much we actually paid for it was like the actual cost 200. I remember the offer letter showed like 200 over K, 250K, I think, ringgit, the entire cost, right? And we actually paid like 11K for it.
And then
Like
eventually yours was waived
because I was under PTPTN and
because
I got my results was quite okay. So fortunately, it got waived completely. So the tuition fee was free. So I'm indebted to UM and Malaysia for that. I mean, for that part of my education, definitely. And also remember the hostel fees. My first 2 years, we were so lucky. We managed to save so much money that the hostel was like 10 ringgit a day, but that was inclusive of 3 meals a day. Wow, that was such a luxury. They had breakfast, they had lunch, and they had dinner. So sometimes they get like chicken, a vegetable, and rice. And sometimes I'll be nice with the makcik and then I'll go for second round when everyone is done. I queue up for another round I'm a big eater, right? So those are fond memories. In first, second, and then third year, they stopped it because it was obviously it's not sustainable, right? But I think if you want to spend on money, these are things you can help poor students with actually, that food and everything. But I think it's not sustainable. Yeah. Those were nice memories.
So Coco, if let's say you're currently based in Malaysia and you're gonna be here long term, and when your kids grow up, you have the financial means to or whether it's tight or not, you have the financial means to send them overseas. Would you prefer or insist that you send them overseas, or you're okay? And if they're okay going to local universities, let's say UM, how would you feel about it?
Honestly, I have to be practical about it. I can give a hypothetical answer now, but I have to see how the political condition is and the education system is next 20 years. It could change a lot. So if things get better, I would definitely want them to go through a public school system and everything here. If it changes,
Even
improves.
in
I mean,
circumstances where you can more than afford sending them
but
overseas.
considering the situation now, I would probably, if I can afford it, send to private school and all that. Honestly, homeschool or whatnot, and I'll find a way lah. I don't think it's going in a great direction, honestly, with all this flip-flop and what Dad said just now extensively. But for university, it depends. So, for example, if the kid knows that he really wants to do medicine and wants to practice in Malaysia or whatever, I think UM medicine is great. I think medicine, for definitely, if you want to practice in Malaysia, doesn't matter if you go overseas or study locally. You're gonna practice in Malaysia, it doesn't make a difference. But the difference is when you want to go overseas. Overseas university of prestige degree definitely helps you get jobs easier. Like you said, it happens throughout degrees. So there's that. But of course, in medicine, there's always medical entrance exams, which sort of relieves that burden of your university degree. So if you perform good in certain medical entrance exams, it's a unified evaluation system that doesn't depend so much on a degree, but the degree helps, I guess, from reputable stuff. But outside of medicine, I think to compete in the corporate world today, it's hard to. Let's just face facts. You probably need a probably prestigious university degree if you can afford it. Yep.
And I feel like this is such a big ticket item in the present, like in our generation, when you start having family. Previously, the big thing you need to save up for is buy a house, get a car, and all that. But now it's like in most people's like checklist, this saving up for the kids' education, and a lot of people already envision that I'm definitely gonna send my kids to private school and overseas and all that.
Like my friends in Singapore already sending their kids for maths class at 2-3 years old, I heard. So
My opinion is a very quick one. My opinion is basically it's not so much on deciding whether to send the kid overseas or local. I think it depends on the career path, depends on the interest that they're looking for. If they want to go to study a certain field, then after that, if they are not able to get into public universities, then you have to consider private or overseas. But if a first degree, for example, that if the course is, let's say, for example, you want to study management, right? And you want to study economics. then what for spend a ton of money, go to UK and study Bachelor Economics. Do it in Malaysia if you can. Then after that, you want to go for a postgraduate, then only you go for overseas, etc. So one needs to be wise. When you send overseas, for what objective, for what reasons?
Right.
Not because it's prestigious, not because you can flaunt around with money, but look at the value for money and then make the decision from there. That will be my take.
So no, I think even in bachelor stage, right, economics degree from local uni will not trump obviously a Harvard business, even if it's a business degree from Harvard, right? So it's a big difference there. But I get what you mean. Postgrad is important, but a degree I think is equally important as well. But it depends on, let's say, for example, if you want to open more doors, you have the luxury of spending that, then by all means go ahead. But if you don't, then you just have to be practical lah. You have to live with what you can, you know. So I think if, for example, if you want to open more doors, definitely, yeah, that you need that lah. You need to invest that lah. Like if you want to go, if your children wants to go work overseas eventually and migrate or whatnot, then it might be a bit difficult if you do a local one. I think it's a fruitful discussion. I'm glad to have mom and dad. Mom's a bit tired in as well on this. That sort of wraps up our education point up to university, don't you think?
I think a big takeaway from what we've discussed today, I think when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it boils down to individual choices and what we make out of our experience ultimately.
Yeah.
Whether you graduate from Harvard or you graduate from UM, obviously the difference in quality and all that.
So let's not over glorify being overseas just for the sake of being overseas, right? I mean, we are talking about a degree and everything. I think the potential is the same. Your potential, no matter where you graduate from and where you study, and whether even if you get a tertiary education, your potential is there. And nowadays, I think we have more opportunities to explore potential, even if you don't go through a formal education, honestly. So there's a lot of avenues for you to grab and, you know, make the best out of your life, I think. A degree is a paper at the end of the day, right? It's just what you make of it and what you learn from it and apply it when you actually start come out. That wraps up our episode. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening. Do subscribe and like.